Welcome to The Commute, a Bible study podcast designed to turn your commute into an opportunity to grow in your faith. Whether you're sure of what you believe or you're not sure what to believe, this podcast is designed to help you better understand who Jesus is, what the Bible's all about, and how that applies to your life today. I'm your host, Pastor Matt, and I'm excited to dive into this week's episode of The Commute.
Well, hey, welcome to The Commute. I'm Pastor Matt.
And I'm Kenzie.
And I'm just going to give you a fair warning. Today, or this week, you're going to be reading through one of my favorite stories in the Gospel of Luke, and also a story that I think is a really powerful picture to help you understand what the life of a disciple is. Because, you know, if you're reading through the New Testament, what becomes abundantly clear is that Jesus calls us to follow him. And at the end of Matthew, he calls us to go and make disciples. But the big question is, what is a disciple? So before we dig in, Kenzie, what's like your picture or definition of a disciple? No wrong answer here.
I didn't know I was having a quiz.
No wrong answer here, but you're wrong.
Oh.
No, I'm just kidding.
No, I think a disciple to me is someone who it is a parent that they follow Jesus and they bring that into the places that they go with them. I think of, this is a good example and a throwback, but Irene. Irene to me is like who I look to as a disciple. Don't tell her I said that.
I won't. We'll keep that on the DL.
Don't tell anyone.
No one tell Irene that Kenzie
I will
feels
know,
she's a
'cause
picture
she'll
of
text me.
discipleship. That's right. She will. She will text. So, and what would you say it is? Just, you know, when you look at her life, you're like, that's somebody that like genuinely is following Jesus.
Yeah, I can just tell that her life is informed by what scripture says, that her life is built around like worship and things like that. And she often would take the time to, like, if she's having a hard moment, like, she'd bring it to God. And that's something that I really struggle with. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, just like people who follow Jesus, who invite people along with them to follow Jesus, and to almost make it accessible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, it's really cool that you bring that up, because actually I was, a couple years ago, pre-pandemic, I was involved in an exponential learning community where pastors from around the country would gather together on the topic of discipleship and evangelism and kind of like discipleship movements. And so the first session we did in Nashville, we were looking at this concept of discipleship. And I just remember at that session, there was this book, No Silver Bullets, which is an amazing book. And it kind of looks at, you know, what makes somebody grow in their faith. Because the reality is we don't grow anybody in their faith. You know, people grow because of the Spirit working. But you can look at some inputs in people's lives and you can see tangible outputs from that. So like, reading scripture, confessing sin, worship, those are different things that actually create a more likely scenario where somebody becomes a disciple. And in this session, it was really interesting. They said, you know, think through who are the top 3 people in your life that you would say are the most mature disciples you know. So you kind of think through that. I'm not going to list any names here.
My bad.
But... because Irene's already going to find out, so we don't need everybody to find out.
I'll just send it to her.
But, you know, it's interesting because he said, okay, now that you have those people in mind, write down some character traits that they have that you would point to as, this is the reason I feel like they're a mature disciple. And so what that allows you to do is it allows you to begin to see this picture of discipleship in flesh and blood, and then also to kind of see how that's lived out in the world. And I think in order for us to make disciples, we have to recognize a couple things. Number one, we live in a time and a season where there's more information and more written about discipleship than probably ever before. Mm-hmm. And we also live in a time where there's way more confusion about it. Like if we were to sit down in church, just in church, with people that generally gather together for worship, and we were to say, pull out a piece of paper, write down your definition of a disciple. I think it would be across the board. I think you would have some people that would be like, oh man, I didn't know there would be a test, I'm leaving. But, you know, oftentimes we can't figure that out. So I think like phase 1 is coming up with a definition of what a disciple is. Not on your own as far as like, okay, this is what I think a disciple would be. but really digging into Scripture and saying, okay, when I read Scripture, this is a picture of discipleship, and then kind of simplifying that. And it was in that same session that I kind of realized, oh, I already have a really simple picture for what I think a disciple is in the life of a disciple. And actually, you see that picture pretty clearly in Luke chapter 19 and the story of Zacchaeus. And so, for me, the pathway of discipleship is really, really seen really well in this story. So, before we dig into it, Kinsey, just give us like an overview of what are the key highlights in this story.
Another quiz.
And then, it's quiz day.
It's quiz day. The theme is also vests if you're watching the video version of this.
Yes, vests
and
quizzes. Yes,
important stuff.
All very normal things.
Well, yeah. So there's a man named Zacchaeus. He was a wee little man.
Yes.
A wee little man was he.
Very short.
And he was a tax collector. Took money from people. Maybe took more than he should from people.
Yeah.
And he was looking to see Jesus. Short man. Climbs up a tree. Jesus points him out in the tree and says, "Come down, I'm coming to your house today."
Yeah. And he's never met Jesus before. Like, he's seeing Jesus for the first time.
Yeah, they're not like long-lost friends.
Which means that Jesus is seeing him for the first time. Mm-hmm. Which kind of adds this crazy layer to the story of what in the world just happened.
Yeah. Yeah, and so he comes down from the tree, meets with Jesus, and then he has this huge transformation and goes to people and says, like, "I will pay you what I've taken 4 times over." And I just think that's really cool.
Yeah, and
picture.
On top of that, he'll then also give half of what he has to the poor.
That too.
So, kind of crazy when you think about it, but what I love about that story is that story to me is a picture of how somebody becomes a disciple and what the life of a disciple looks like. And so what's interesting to me and some of the things that I always highlight when I'm sharing this story is Jesus meets Zacchaeus where he is. Mm-hmm. Jesus doesn't look at Zacchaeus and say, "Hey, Zacchaeus, you need to come to the temple, and then I'm going to preach to you for a while, and you'll figure out who I am, and then take the new member class, and you're in." He doesn't do that. He meets Zacchaeus where he is, and he actually says, "Zacchaeus, we're going to your house." And then who comes to the house? All these other tax collectors, other, disreputable sinners. So all the religious people are looking in going, what's Jesus doing hanging out with somebody like that? But that's Jesus. Jesus always goes to where people are that need him. He doesn't make them come to him. He's always making the first move and going to them. And he allows people to experience him where they are. So the life of a disciple starts with experiencing the gospel and Jesus where you are. Not where somebody else wants you to be, not after you've, cleaned yourself up just a little bit, and then now you can experience it. No, you experience Jesus where you are. And then at some point in that night, Zacchaeus really connects with Jesus and who he is. And you see that because when Jesus connects with Zacchaeus, after Zacchaeus is experiencing Jesus where he is, Zacchaeus then becomes a reflection of something radically different. Now think about this. You've got a tax collector, not just a tax collector, the chief tax collector, who is used to making money by collecting taxes for a foreign government that nobody wants there. They're kind of an oppressor, is what you could put it as. And, he's collecting taxes, and then he sees an opportunity to make even more money off his own people. So he collects more. So who is his fundamental God? His fundamental God is money. He's willing to do anything to get that, right? And now all of a sudden, what you see is because Zacchaeus is connected to Jesus, the God changes, and therefore the way he's living his life is an expression of the God he's actually connected to. So Zacchaeus becomes a reflection of Jesus. And as a reflection of Jesus, what does he do? He says, look, I've defrauded people, so I'm going to make this right. I'm giving back 4 times because I feel what I've done is wrong. If he'd have given back just what he had taken, that would have been a good thing. Mm-hmm. But to give back 4 times is this just really want to make amends here. And then to give half of what he has to the poor so he can take care of those in need that can't take care of themselves. it's this picture of Jesus. And then Jesus has this statement. He says, "Today salvation has come to this house, since he also is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost." See, discipleship is realizing that Jesus takes you where you are. He connects with you where you are, and then he makes you a reflection of what you're connected to. And that's not just something that allows other people to experience Jesus, but it's also the path of a discipleship. If we continually put ourselves in places where we can experience Christ and connect with him, we will more and more become a reflection of what we're connected to. And so it's this unending process, here and now, but also it's something that goes out on mission, the way Jesus went out on mission. So that when you're going to the places you live, work, and play, you're giving people a picture of who Jesus is and what Jesus has done. And sometimes it's a radical picture, like with Zacchaeus. And other times it's just something that people look at and they're like, man, there's just something different about you. And so you get people a chance to see that, kind of like what Kinsey was talking about with Irene. It's like when she encounters a problem, she just does something different. She immediately takes it to God. And Kinsey was like, I struggle with that, So it's like you see this picture of something different, and because you see that picture, you see Jesus.
That was a lot.
That was a lot.
That was good content.
Yeah. So I would say, if that's a good picture of a disciple for you, hold on to that. If there's another picture of a disciple, just understand what that picture of being a disciple is. And then ask yourself, how can I go out and intentionally be a disciple in the world around me, so that the side product of that is, as you are going, which is what Matthew says, you can continue making disciples. If you ever have more questions about that, just shoot me an email, matt@blcmail.org. You can connect with me there, and we'd love to talk to you more about that. But till next time, it's been a joy hanging out with you right here on The Commute, and we look forward to seeing you next week right here.
Thanks for checking out this episode of The Commute. For more information on The Commute or to join the Commute Bible Reading Plan, simply download the Bethlehem Church Live mobile app or go to bethlehemchurchlive.com/thecommute.